All right, we can go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar today about organizational development. We're excited to get started. And before we do, for those of you who are new to KMI, we'd like to give a real quick introduction and then we'll hand it over to our hosts. Again, for those who are new, KMI is home to the Certified Knowledge Manager program. That's the #1 certification in KM worldwide. You can look up more information on this program up here under classes. And we also have our CKS specialist curriculum, which is a deep dive into a specific KM topic or KM related topic. In this case today, we're looking at organizational development. I happen to have the web page queued up right here. We're excited about our debut class coming up in late June. Do check that out. If you'd like more information or a quote, just reach out to us. Maybe Laura, if you could put the email address in the chat so folks can find us and get a quote or more information on this exciting new class. So we're eager to get started with that too. For free resources and more KM content, you can always go to the webinars section. We've listed a few of our favorite top 5 webinars in this dropdown, and you can go to the full webinar series here for all of the activity that we've done in recent months. And first it shows what's coming up, and then you scroll down and it's all chronological, going backwards. And then you can see recent featured webinars. And as you can see, there's been quite a bit, and a lot of these top 5 themed webinars too that we're really excited about, that are really popular too. And don't forget the blog section for all of the latest blog activity, and we're very active with that as well. So it's a nice little handy search box for any KM topic or by author. And if you scroll down, that's also chronological. You can see all the recent articles that we've published that are kind of nice for just additional content for you. So do check that out when you can. All right, well, let me go ahead and hand it over to John and Dr. Varney. We have John Hovell, KMI instructor. He's also managing partner at Stratactical LLC, and Dr. Sharon Varney, an OD expert who's worked alongside with John in recent years for their own OD workshop, which we've kind of converted into this new certification program that we're excited about, again, coming up in late June. But without further ado, let me hand it over to them. And thanks again for being with us today.
Thanks, Eric.
What do you think, Dr. Varney? Should we jump in, get started?
Yeah, we could drop the doctor. I'll be Sharon. Hi, everybody. Great to great to meet you. I know that probably John knows many of you. I've met a few of you, and mainly in the KM world. So hi again. In the knowledge management world, I'm probably best known for my work as director of the Henley Forum at Henley Business School, which I've been involved in for the last 8 years. So hi again, and if we haven't met before, it's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, me too. I recognize many names and some new names as well. Nice to meet you all. And we're hoping to make this quite conversational. Sharon and I have worked together for years, and that's what I love about our partnership is it's meant to be quite back and forth. So I think I'll go ahead and share my screen to show you the plan for today. It's an hour, and yet it'll probably move by pretty quick. We've got almost down to the minute planned here. So it looks like right where we are right now, a quick welcome from KMI. We thought for about 20 minutes, we'd talk about maybe 10 minutes first on what is OD, and then 10 minutes on, we know the top 5 series has been really successful with KMI. So this isn't a full top 5 webinar, but we thought we would sneak in our top 5 reasons to really answer the core question of today. Why is organization development so important right now? So, and then we'll do some breakouts for you to get a chance to chat with other people here on the call, make it really conversational. We'll come back and do some group level questions and answers. And we also have our sort of created famous organization development framework that Sharon and I created called the 3 Ds with use of self. So we will share that with you for the last 15 minutes or so. So Sharon, how should we start with what is OD?
Yeah, so it sounds like a simple question, doesn't it, John? But this is the hardest question in OD. And I remember a few years ago, I thought, right, I was doing some research and I was really keen to pin it down. So I interviewed a lot of OD experts and said, so what's OD then? And almost everybody started with, well, it depends. Do you ever hear that, John? It depends.
I do. Yep. It's, it reminds me so much, especially with a knowledge management group here. All these people here should have heard the same joke. If you get 10 people 10 knowledge management practitioners in a room and ask them the definition of knowledge management, you won't get 10 definitions of KM. You'll get 20 definitions of KM from 10 people. So yeah, I think OD is pretty similar.
Yeah. But, I think, there's a few pointers on the screen. So, this may be something that you know a lot about, or you may be new to OD, but it's not new. So organization development started back in the 1940s. So this is, oh my gosh, 80 plus years ago. And it's really all about groups. And I think that's what makes OD different to all the kind of sort of partner areas. So, if you work in knowledge management, or you work in learning and development, or organizational learning, or HR, we've all got these different areas. But I think one of the things that's really distinctive about OD is it's really about how groups work, and that's so important, isn't it, John?
Yeah, there's several people that get credit for it, and building on your timing comment, Sharon, really knowledge management, while it may have been around for thousands and thousands of years, it was really like coined in the 90s. So yeah, it is worth mentioning. I'm going to try for this whole webinar kind of keep comparing to KM a little bit. So yeah, it's got 50 or 60 years more experience and trials and tribulations than KM does, which is interesting to note. The other thing I would say is even just the acronym, I always like to start with that too. And sorry, it's not written here on screen. I should have put a bullet point about this too, or a list item about it. OD gets confused with OD, just like KM gets confused with IM, knowledge management and information management. Organization development gets confused with organization design. So when you're restructuring, or when I know in the States, I survived the OD, right? When we had to lay people off or redesign our business, that's org design work. That's different from org development work. Very, very close, similar. They do know each other. They do talk to each other. But yeah, to what you're seeing here on screen, why do people behave differently in groups? What's going on in this group right now? Do you see how close that is to KM? So in KM, if we're creating an environment for tacit knowledge to flow, where's knowledge getting stuck? OD comes in and says, well, what's going on in this group? Do people feel safe? Do people not feel safe? Are people being courageous, not courageous? Are people using sarcasm and ruining the conversation? What's the impact of sarcasm and humor in this conversation right now? So it's so close to KM, but it is a little bit different. And that's what that third item is also referring to. So you've got behavioral sciences like psychology, sociology, anthropology, so many more. OD likes to take those and apply them, use those models and theories in real, right now, this group that's in front of me, what's going on with their psychology, what's going on with their group sociology, what kind of culture is going on in this group. And so that's where OD and KM, totally different fields, but can partner really well together. What else would you add to definition, Sharon?
Yeah, a couple of things actually, John. So I think, applied behavioural sciences is absolutely the heritage and still part of OD today. But what we've seen coming in is also complexity science. So those of you who work in large organisations, or you're maybe in the public sector, in government, you're going to find there's lots and lots of connections. So when we talk about groups, it can be, relatively small groups like we are today. It can be much smaller groups, 2 or 3 people, already a group. And it can be much bigger groups. So I just want to say that, the complexity of OD and the complexity of the working world has been increasing. And, without wanting to give away where we're heading, I think that's one of the reasons that it's becoming more important now. But the other thing I just wanted to say is, so we're saying what, where OD came from, but, what's its job? And actually, I would say the job of OD is to create more effective organizations. And so, that's what it's doing. So what does effective mean? Well, that might be different. That really might depend. It might be different in one place than another, one time than another. But, it's not about leaving things the same. It's about creating more effective organizations, working with groups to do that. Yeah, just wanted to add that, John.
Dr. Mayan Chen Judge was one of my mentors, as well as Sharon's in OD, and sort of, dare say almost a founder of the OD practice. And she passed away during the pandemic. One of the things that she taught me was that next to last list item there, boldly revealing the system to itself. So sometimes it's like, if you've ever done deep personal work where you've looked in your own mirror and looked at your own patterns, your own complexity, your own who you are, and if that's congruent with yourself or not. OD practitioners, not always, but quite often, are doing that with groups. What is going on in this group? And then the OD practitioner, part of their role is to see that, or to offer that, or to engage with, boldly revealing the system to itself. What's going on in this group? And is it healthy? Is it purposeful? Is it designed for that reason? Should we move on, Sharon, or any final thoughts on what is OD?
Yeah.
We could spend months on this if we wanted to.
Yeah, just see if anything's coming up in chat. Anybody got any questions there, or your own definitions that are coming up? Otherwise, feel free to add things and add questions during chat as we go through. Eric and Laurie will be keeping an eye on chat, so it's very easy to join our conversation.
I'll put something in chat right now just to do that too. So NTL, National Training Laboratories, as well as Organization Development. Those are two. There's many others, but those are at least two that are popping to mind for me in the moment. So you don't have to just hear us. So then the next 10 minutes we wanted to spend on the question for the webinar, hopefully what brought you here. Why is organization development important right now in this phase of the pandemic, at this point of 2023? Why is it important right now? So let me see if I can kind of get our text here on screen together. How's that? Sharon. So Sharon and I created these lists separately, and yet they're very similar, which is hilarious. So let's see if I can make this fit like this and like this. Should I jump in first, Sharon? Where we both have the same item, hyper-connected and everything's connected. So my list is on the left and Sharon's is on the right. David Gertine, for many of you will recognize his name too. He has a whole presentation on how the world is more connected than ever. So the 6 degrees of separation and the kind of math that goes with 8 billion people on the planet and how we're all connected. And of course, technology and advancing technology supports that even more. What I guess I would also add to it is, in OD, we have this model called levels of system. And I guess I don't want to spend a lot of time getting into it, but you can do one level of system is inside yourself. Another level of system is with you and one other person. And it's not just group size, but to keep it simple for now, you can go all the way up and you can do OD or practice OD or be aware of organization development for 8 billion people. So hyper-connected in the sense that all of us are even more connected now, which adds even more group dynamic now than has ever been really noticeable or observable in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the point. And we're so connected digitally as well as physically, and in multiple ways with multiple people. So anything that we say and do can actually create ripple effects. And that's one of the really interesting parts about OD. But there's something really weird, I think, in the working world. We create these organizations, and maybe it's what John, you were saying about organization design. So we draw these boxes, and that might be a person, it might be a function, it might be a group, and they're really good at doing their role. There's a really skilled person, there's a really skilled group. But actually, we then assume that all just adds up to a really effective organization. but it doesn't. What it adds up to is lots of people doing lots of different things. We might have loads of different change projects. That's a common one that I see. Everybody's involved in change in some ways. We've got loads of different change projects. They're not connecting up. So, the O in OD is about organizational. So what we're really trying to do is work on the connecting parts. And I think that is one of the areas in organizational life that is emphasized. So how do different people work together? How do different teams work together? How do different organizations work together? What happens at those really tricky boundaries? So it's about interdependencies, it's about relationships. And if you want an effective team, an effective business, an effective organization, that's where you want to spend your time and effort, I would say.
Yeah, I've even got it down here as the last list item. I wrote emotional quotient and intellectual quotient. And I added a third. I don't know if there's an RQ as well, but relational. So just building on what you're talking about, Sharon, I think I will point directly to the pandemic, and maybe it's just me and where I am in my life, but there is something about I'm much more aware of the healthy relationships I have and the unhealthy relationships I have, how I feel and relate to certain groups and how I relate and feel with other groups. And then from an OD point of view, and we'll talk about use of self later, noticing how I interact with those groups. So it's the relationships and the interactions. Do I speak up and speak my full truth in some groups and not in other groups? And what's going on for me that causes me to do that or not in some groups and in other groups? So the relationship side, and even more deeply aware of my emotions, especially as a man. Am I sad, happy, angry, irritated, frustrated? Do I feel safe enough to speak that in the moment, or do I just hold on to it and do my work later outside of the group? All of that, to me, I think potentially the pandemic has offered a major opportunity to be aware of emotions and potentially even speak more about emotions, which I think relates to your second item, getting burnt out. Sharon, maybe a little?
Yeah, it does. I'm going to build on what you've said, John, and then come to Bonnie's question, because I think that's a really, really good one. But, people are getting burnt out or are already burnt out. And I think, this is really important, because those connections between people tend to dip, when we're massively feeling under pressure. The attention quite often goes to within. It goes on, getting the stuff done rather than making the connections across the piece. And that there's so many people so exhausted. So this isn't about putting in a well-being program. This is about understanding what are the ways that we're working that are draining people. Why are we burning people out? What are the patterns in terms of how we're working together, the ways we interact, that's creating this draining well-being? Don't just put a sticking plaster over and say, we've got a well-being program that'll sort it out. Sharon, it's your job to look after your own well-being. But actually, what might be draining my well-being is actually around the relationships, as you were saying, John. What healthy relationships that sort of top up our vitality, top up our energy, and what are the ones that just drain it day after day.
Maybe then. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I wanted to link it back to Bonnie's question, because I think I saw coming up in chat, there was a question about, are organizations investing more or less in OD? And I think what I've been seeing, Bonnie, is a big investment in org design, which might lead into that sort of third point that I've got about hybrid working. So kind of, how do we design our organization? And a real concern with what's in the boxes. So however you define boxes, roles, teams, what are the bits in the organization? How do those bits fit together? But what we really need is OD and D. So please don't ever do org design without org development. Otherwise you miss the point, I think.
Which is Joshua's question here in chat now too. Yeah, let me add on Bonnie's, because I think it does go maybe with my new patterns comment too. Over or investing or under investing? It's beautiful, Bonnie, because it's both, which is a very OD answer. It's both because on one hand, under investing, there are very few full-time organization development jobs. To Sharon's point, there are quite a few org design jobs, but full-time OD is kind of rare. It's usually a consultant that comes in more than having like a full-time internal person. So in that sense, I would say way under investing, but I would also say over investing, although I don't know that I would say over, I would say there is some investment, because in a strange way, everyone's job is OD. Everyone's going to meetings. Everyone's trying to, from a knowledge management point of view, get tacit knowledge flowing. So it's everyone is a knowledge worker. Same thing in OD. Everyone is an OD practitioner trying to make things more efficient. Not going so far in OD though as like seeing the group dynamic and talking about what's going on. What are the patterns we see in this group right now? That's where it's like part of your role, but how skilled are you at, and how practiced are any of us at actually intervening or working with groups? And so Joshua, to your question, just to like, maybe I'll even write it on screen. Org design is, if you've heard of the Jay Galbraith STAR model, that is the quintessential org design. It's restructuring an organization. It's also strategy work. It's also people and benefits work. It's also process improvement work. All of that fits into org design work. There's also, to give you more models, the McKinsey 7S is the second most popular model that I tend to use for org design work. In org development work, we're looking at different models, and we'll show you an OD framework here in a few minutes. I'm starting to lean towards breakouts, Sharon, but where are you now?
Can I just say a couple of things, and I'll do it quite quickly because I think we've sort of lent into that. So, my third point about hybrid working, few businesses have really cracked it. That's an org design and an organization development challenge. How do we design and develop organizations for different working patterns? I think also, though, you made a really important point, and I just want to strengthen what you said there, John, because, OD, organization development, is you don't have to have an OD job title to do OD. It would be like saying only the IT department does IT. Nobody else, uses IT. It's crazy. So actually, if you're involved in creating change in any way, that might be through KM, that might be because you're a manager, it might be because you're a leader, it might be because you're a senior professional in an area. If you're trying to create change, actually having an OD mindset, skill set, tool set is going to be really important for you. You don't need the job title to say OD manager before you can benefit from really developing your own OD capability. That's what I wanted to add, John.
You'll love this, Sharon. They're bringing up, Sharon is definitely a complexity and change expert, and in chat, they're bringing up change management now, Sharon. So there you go. It's coming
another
in.
Favorite.
It's so
another
funny.
favorite topic.
We probably even have a slide somewhere, Sharon, that compares org development, org design, change management, and knowledge management, because they are all similar but different. Similar, sort of aiming for similar things, but doing it in slightly different ways, which, is what kind of draws me in. Do you mind if I pop everybody in breakouts? Is now a good time to do that?
Right.
All right.
And what's, if you can just remind us, what's the question, John, for people to be chatting about?
Exactly. So let me see if I can zoom in, and let me see if I can also type it in chat for you. We put some thought into this, just like a knowledge cafe. Really tried to think about a clear, simple, but powerful question. So here's what we came up with, and I think we'll stick with it. To all of you, what is your current understanding of organization development? Like, what's your definition, since we've shared ours? And what is your need what brought you here for organization development right now? So what's your understanding? What's your need for OD? I've put it in chat. I'm going to open up the breakouts, and I think we've still got time for about 12 minutes, Sharon, maybe slightly less, like 11, but you should have some time in groups of about 4 to 5 people, give or take, to chat about OD. See you back in 11, 12 minutes. Thank you.
Welcome back. Welcome back. I hope you're having some good conversations in those breakout groups. We always feel really guilty because we know that that's probably what you're really enjoying, but you know, we've got 60 minutes together, so we're going to invite everybody back. So in the next 28 seconds, 27, 26, we should have everybody back in the room, but I hope you had some productive conversations. If you're an early joiner, just to let you know, we're going to be asking you in chat to share what is your top OD need. We'd love to hear a few. So if you've come back early, you've got an extra little bit of thinking time. And welcome. I can see everybody coming back here. It's great to see you. I hope you've been having some really good and interesting conversations. So John and I, you'll notice we put our own top 5 reasons, and you know, we wanted to see to what extent we agree and disagree, how similar or different they are. So we would love you. We hope that you had great conversations. I'm sure you do. But as John said, could you share in chat your, you know, what are the top OD needs that came out from your conversations? We'd love to know in a group like this, what are the things that you're really seeing, your top needs for OD in 2023?
We've got lots of videos turned on now too. Hello to everyone in video.
Yeah, great to see
you. All right. And our plan for the next 2-3 minutes is just to kind of chat about what's going on in chat. KM evangelism. Yeah. So you could use OD to notice when a group is getting tacit or explicit knowledge stuck, and use OD as well as KM to get it unstuck. Or yeah, to raise awareness of KM. Sure. I know I do a lot of that. There you go. New best friends, Rachel and Danielle.
Great. I've got a little delay on chat, so John, if you can kind of read out some that are coming through, that would be helpful.
What do you think about this from Carrie? Differentiation between change management and org development. We were just talking about that.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to have them both and know what the differences are, because they're really doing some different things. Oh, I saw Kim's come up, adapting in a changing environment. Oh, yes.
Yeah, ever changing. Yeah. And, Guardian KM awareness in Kenya. Misunderstanding from leadership is a huddle. Yeah, there's a challenge. Yeah. All right. So KM awareness. And honestly, if we were all OD practitioners right here on this call, you'd be hearing the same thing in OD. How do we raise more awareness of OD? People don't know what it is. And then when we come in, they're a little bit scared and intimidated by us. How do we raise awareness and help understand the value of OD, just like we try to do in KM? So yeah, it's another great place for a partnership. You know, there's a master's degree. I shouldn't probably say this, but it's just so timely right now. There's a master's degree at George Mason University in Washington, D.C. that is a 2-year master's in ODKM. So they do both organization development and knowledge management in the same master's degree. That's how close these two things are. What are you seeing more in chat, Sharon?
Yeah, it's coming through, and I saw hybrid come up a few times. I think that is one of the, you know, it's a concrete challenge that so many organizations are struggling with, and they're struggling with, well, you know, whatever it is, it's definitely more than a policy. And, you know, seeing in chat, it changes culture. There's real opportunities, I think, in the flexibility that hybrid working can bring in. But if we're doing all the same things in the same way, and it's just, are you honestly in the office or not? I think we're absolutely missing the potential to create really effective organizations.
Yeah, and I guess we'll jump into our model now, but thanks, Jim. Thanks, Bonnie. Love it. Like, one of our thinkings is potentially after this, let's call it a webinar, but after this hour together, I hope I'm not saying too much here, Sharon, but I think we're hoping to write a blog entry. And so we'll save this chat and try and comment on what's in the chat. And then we're also going to do a Slido in a few minutes here to, again, try and like keep as much knowledge flowing here as we can. Sharon, remind me, who's starting with our framework? Is it me or you, or how should we do this?
Yeah, let me give a bit of a background here. So right at the beginning, when we talked about, what is OD, and the answer was it depends, which is okay, when you've been working in OD for a while. It's not so helpful for people going, well, what is OD? How can I use it? How does it help me? What is it? So, we put together this 3Ds OD framework to give a few handholds, and this is the framework that we've been using to help people take their first steps in OD practice or their next steps in OD practice, because it's a really good framework we find for, well, what am I already bringing to OD? Because none of you are starting from absolutely nothing, so it's quite helpful. You'll see, you will see if you've sort of read around OD before, you will definitely see the words diagnostic OD and dialogic OD. But I think in ours we also talk about dynamic OD, which is really important for those of you who are talking about adaptability, constant change. You're going to need the dynamism as well, and absolutely use of self. It's not OD without it. John, what do you say about the framework?
For this, yeah, thanks, Sharon. Especially for this group here today, I'm going to make a big assumption that many of us are KM practitioners. Dialogic OD is KM by another name. I just want to say it that direct, to that blunt. It's not exactly all the way 100% true, but it pretty much is. So that's where I want to really call your attention into. I think if you started researching and looking at Bob Marshak and who are the other names? Jervis Bush. What's the amazing woman's name in Canada? Yabam Gilpin Jackson, right? These are the leaders of dialogic OD. Read their stuff. It's KM. It's fantastic to see them well, we need to get into conversations and we need to get people into breakout groups and do rounds of conversations and get them talking. You're doing KM. So you've already got this sort of door into OD because you're already you'd have so much to offer to dialogic OD practitioners. Where I have loved my OD journey is going backwards in time to the 40s, 50s, 60s and looking at diagnostic OD, because let's be honest, at least my view of KM, we don't do a lot of formal statistics analysis of. We try to measure KM, and then we always sort of say, how do you measure intangibles? How do you measure knowledge? How do you measure something you can't touch? I can measure information, but I can't measure knowledge. Diagnostic OD for decades measured group dynamics. Let me put numbers on. How long did you spend in meetings? How long did you talk to each other? Let's put numbers to Likert. OD created the Likert scale. You're all familiar with a scale of 1 to 10. That's an OD creation. That didn't exist before OD existed as a field. Flip charts, when you write on a flip chart in a meeting, OD created flip charts, right? This is how OD practitioners created stuff in the 40s to help groups work together better. A lot of that is diagnostic OD. And there's a bunch of models to help you diagnose what's going on in this group with data. Dynamic OD, as Sharon was trying to say, that's much newer. That's really just the last 5-10 years, give or take. Help me out, Sharon. Even more action orientation, which I think KM is headed towards. I bet many of you have been through the CKM at KMI, Certified Knowledge Manager Knowledge Management Institute, the feedback we're getting is, I want more and more activities. I want more and more actions. Tell me how to do KM. Dynamic OD is that. Don't just measure. Don't just do diagnostic. Don't just talk about it, dialogue, if I say it really negatively. Take some action. So dynamic OD is very much every second, every moment, taking organization, developing the organization in this moment. And the last thing I guess I say is I'll lean us over towards use of self. In the center of this whole model, again, I would give credit to Dr. Mei-Yan Chen-Judge, but there's many others that have practiced use of self. I would point you towards Dr. Mei-Yan Chen-Judge's latest research on it. Use of self, let me go 2 minutes on this, maybe less. It's also known as self as an instrument. That's how I like to start with use of self. So if any of you play an instrument, or even if any of you sing, right, like use your voice as an instrument, you know that you have to learn the instrument. I played trumpet, so I had to learn the valves, how to clean the valves, what each of the valves do. I had to really study the mouthpiece and how much air to blow, right? Study the instrument, get good at the instrument to be able to play the instrument, to like, you know, have your music come through the instrument. In OD, you are the instrument. Your body, your thoughts, your emotions, your body feelings. Does my stomach hurt? Do my knees hurt? Are my feet on the ground? Using yourself, your consciousness, and beyond your consciousness to do OD work. That's something that KM does not have as a concept, and I think it's a huge miss from the KM field. So one of the things I love to do is bring use of self into KM, or bring use of self into conversational leadership. And it's borrowed directly from Gestalt psychotherapy and organization development. What did I miss, Sharon?
You didn't miss anything, but there was a cool question from Bonnie, which so Bonnie asked, what role has does OD play to design collaboration tools and experiences? And, you know, I think it's a way to look at some of the differences between the 3Ds. So if you were to take a diagnostic OD approach to that body, you would gather a lot of data about, you know, what's happening now, where the gaps are in the organization. You would get some focus groups together, you would design your collaboration instruments, and then you would put them into practice. So that would be your diagnostic way to do that. If you're taking a dialogic OD, you'd be trying to catch where that's already happening, and you'd be having conversations around, and that the conversations are the collaboration instrument. So you'd be really having collaborative dialogic conversations. And with dynamic OD, you're trying to catch it happening. You're trying to work out, well, where are some of the best collaborations happening in our organization, outside of our organization? What's going on? How do we fan the flames of that? So you're trying to catch the action. So, you know, OD can be involved in all of that, but, you know, depending on what your organization has and what it needs, there are different ways that you can apply OD. And, you know, what John was saying about use of self is, you know, I would go as far as saying, if you're not using yourself, if you're not using your sensing to work out what's needed, it probably isn't OD. So one of the ways that you're using yourself is to really, well, what balance is needed in my organization? Do we need to kind of, you know, catch people doing this really well, find out what that is, fan the flames? Is it, you know, it's not happening, we need a lot of data, and then we formally design interventions. So, you know, I think it just brings it to life a little bit.
Because we've had so much change mentioned here, Sharon, sorry if I jumped in too fast. I love your slide where you talk about change to, change with, change by. Since we've had change management language, do you mind talking about that for a second?
Yeah, sure. And I think, you know, there are quite different, these 3Ds come from different start point. So diagnostic OD, we would be the OD expert. You know, you'd say, right, I am the OD expert. You're the OD expert. We gather data and, you know, we design an intervention. So it's change to or change with, perhaps. You know, it's how are you changing the organization? You know, dialogic OD is very much change with. You know, you are in conversation, changing. So, you know, the OD practitioner is in the dialogue, in the conversation. In dynamic OD, you might not be involved. You might be standing back and going, it's already happening. You know, here's where change is already happening. And that's your addition. So change by might not be by you, if that makes sense.
I'm going to try and get it on screen here too, so we can see it really quick. And I guess while I do this, our thinking for the end is, let's go into Slido and have the collective emerge. What are your questions, comments, concerns right now about OD? This is change with. And then the last one is change by. I know it's like way oversimplified, but it's helped me. So I hope that's helpful to you too, to kind of think about that. Tying together change management and organization development a little bit. But in these last 5 minutes, here is the Slido code. So if you go to slido.com and type in 3312455, and we can see if we can get the link for you in chat too. Hopefully you've done Slido before. You're basically just asking a question or typing a comment. And then after you type yours, you can press thumbs up. Look, you know, scroll through the list of other questions, press thumbs up on other questions that you appreciate. And this is what we'll talk about for the last 5 minutes, is whatever collective questions get voted up. And then Sharon and I will write a blog entry soon after this hour together to try and respond to as many of them as we can. So if we're lucky, it should pop right up on screen as people type in their questions. Jim, Sharon, do you want to take Jim's chat here? Enterprise agility floating in our company, and it seems where org design is coming from. So enterprise agility alongside org design. Any thoughts?
Sorry, I can't see the chat yet. It's a little bit slow.
Enterprise agility. I don't know, Jim. You could even unmute. What? Say more about enterprise agility.
That they are the department. I mean, the department is getting bigger. One of my former team members just moved over to that department. So, and they're just adding on, and they're the ones that are working with individual departments to help them to be more efficient and to more agile. And so that seems like it's not organizational development, but that seems to be what's exploding. Yeah, not formally, I guess is the word I should say, but that seems to be what's happening. And so that was my question: is that happening? It seems like that's probably happening in other companies as well.
Yeah, let's see if anybody replies in chat. I guess what I would say, my experience with my clients, or Sharon, anytime I start hearing agility and agile, I would reference our friends, and I am purposefully using that word, in project management. I start thinking Scrum Masters. I start thinking 2-week efforts with ceremonies and a very sort of project management approach. I could be wrong, but I think that's often agility kind of goes that. And so we've mentioned today change management, org design, org development, knowledge management. Now I'm bringing in project management. And guess what project managers are doing, right? They're trying to put a beginning, a middle, and an end to an effort and raise clarity and communications and shared understanding and do it sort of as efficiently as possible. You heard Sharon say that OD is trying to make more efficient organizations. All of us could be project managers and say, yep, so are we, more efficient by doing project management. Wow, we're getting lots of votes in Slido now. Sharon, do you see these?
Yeah, I do, and I think there's some good things that we can share. So I wanted to just share a link to some research that I did on what is OD, so it's easy to download. But I'll be honest, we're big fans of Mayan Cheng Judge, and she's got a great book on OD that I think is great for anyone who's starting out in this area. One of the other, I think we can just see your, oh yeah, okay, deliberately see your screen. Cool.
Yeah, it's on purpose. Here's the book that she's recommending. It went to Thrift Books instead of Amazon, but I'll put this in chat. It's called the OD Practitioner. The cover looks like this. That would be, I think, for both Sharon and I, a top recommendation for books. So where would you recommend? Yeah, look at Mayan's stuff. I'm an NTL member, so I would recommend NTL. Again, is National Training Laboratories. It's ntl.org. They wrote a handbook on OD. So I think it's funny. I think the title is actually the NTL Handbook for OD and Change. So they brought them both together into one book. And Sharon, we're KM people, right? So I would recommend coming to webinars like this and courses and Twitter and Facebook and groups. And I love chatting about ODKM all the time. So I'll put my email in chat too. How about the second, or go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, I was just looking at the time and thinking we ought to just, say a big thank you and close. Do reach out to us on LinkedIn, say hi. It'd be great to connect that way, and we will put something together. So thank you for all of your questions. That's been amazing.
Yeah, big thank you. And Eric, I guess we'll pass to you for the last 2 seconds. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks so much, Dr. Varney. Thank you, John. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. We do have a recording of this. We'll just do a quick little edit job, and probably within 48 hours, we'll have it ready for you. So we'll first announce that to this list, those who've registered for the webinar, before we go public with that. So we'll make sure you have the recording. Thanks again for joining us today, and let's try to do this again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.